Hey friend, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I'm going to show you how to tame an aggressive bass guitar in the mix. We're going to be looking at an aggressively played bass guitar today, and I'm going to show you how to tame some of those bigger peaks using distortion. And this is going to help you make sure you can sit your bass guitar in the mix and it's not jumping all over the place volume-wise. But before we dive in here, if you're ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety and really start to hone your workflow as an audio engineer, then I have just the thing for you. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and it's just a simple PDF that will walk you through the entire mixing process, step by step, to help you get professional and radio-ready mixes without any more of the hassle and without any more of the guesswork. It is a completely free guide, and you can download it below using the link in the video description. Now let's jump in here and take a look at this bass guitar. Let me hit play, and you can hear it inside the mix, and then I'll solo it up, and you can hear our finished bass for this track here. So here's our finished mix for this song. So you can hear it's a pretty aggressively played bass part. It fits into this bigger punk style track with that extra aggression and that distortion that's on it. But if you notice volume wise, it's staying pretty much in one place, right? We're not moving all over the place. We're not missing bass in some parts and having a whole bunch in others. We're very much keeping this bass controlled so we can set it where we want it in the mix. We don't want our bass guitar moving all over the place because then we don't have a good strong foundation in the low end to build our guitars, to build the rest of our track on top of. Now, let me kind of go to the source here. You can see there's these bigger peaks that really jump out on this bass guitar. So if we take off all the processing here, you'll kind of see where we're sitting, and I'm actually going to take off the distortion on our amp as well. We're going to talk about that in a second. So here's our raw bass. You can see our raw bass, those bigger peaks, those bigger transients really jump out. And suddenly we have a lot of bass, and then we have, back to the normal amount, and then we have a lot of bass, and then it jumps back down. We can't sit our bass guitar correctly inside the mix and build a strong foundation if our bass guitar is jumping out only at certain parts, only on emphasized notes like that. We need to tame those, we need to control those so we can sit our bass guitar properly inside the mix here. And the way I'm doing that is with distortion. Now, we don't need to do any extra work here on the bass DI because the bass DI is just the bottom end. So first of all here, I'm doing the frequency split trick on the bass. So our bass DI is just the low end. And you can hear that's not too crazy volume-wise. And then our bass amp is just our top end, and you'll hear this is where we're getting that extra dynamic range. On those bigger transients and those bigger peaks, we have like a 6 dB jump in volume on the bass, which is pretty crazy and very extreme for something like bass guitar that we need to be really solid in the bottom end. So the way we're going to solve that is by using distortion. Now, because it's already an aggressively played bass guitar, we can lean into that distortion to get some vibe as well as control the dynamic range. And I'm only putting it on the bass amp here. So what I'm using is the red light distortion. Well, let me hit play here. You can hear our before, and then I'll kick it in. Pay attention to how our volume moves with and without the distortion. So here's without, and then I'll kick it in. We get that extra aggression, we get that extra meanness from the distortion that's going to sit really, really nicely and help our bass guitar cut through in the track. But what it's doing overall is it's controlling the dynamic range of the bass amp here. So if we watch, it looks quite a bit similar to how our bass DI is moving, just the low end. It's having those 1 to 2 dB jumps in volume on the bigger peaks instead of like a 6 dB jump in volume on those bigger peaks where suddenly our bass guitar is moving all over the place. It's going to be a lot easier to control when it comes time to work on, the bass group here and sit our bass guitar in the mix. So listen one more time and we'll break down some of the settings here. Here's with, and then we'll go without. Pay attention to our volume again on the meter here. One of the extra bonuses is we have that extra perceived volume coming out of the bass amp as well with the distortion. If you're watching just the meter here, it would look like the bass amp without the distortion is louder with those peaks jumping up about 6 dB. But when we kick the distortion in, it feels louder with the distortion because of all that extra energy, that meanness that we're adding in with the distortion. And we, lower the dynamic range. We keep our bass pretty much in one place here, and it's going to get even better when we throw in all the processing on our bass group here. So all I'm doing, pulling in red light distortion here, I'm running it on the second stage here, so a bit more aggressive than where it starts on the first stage, but not too crazy with all the way up in the third stage there. I'm running it on the hard tube setting instead of the soft tube setting. We can get away with that because it is more of an aggressive style track. If you want it to be a little bit more transparent, you can reach for something softer and be gentler with the distortion. It'll still help you control your dynamic range. We got input at 2. We've got the distortion raised to 2. Not using the high or low pass filters. We're doing that again with the EQ. Before, using just the top end on our amp. And then pushing the drive up to about 3 here. And I'm just pulling down the output, so we're sitting pretty close volume-wise, at least on the meter, to where we were before the distortion. Take a listen without and then with. It's giving us an excellent level of control over those bigger peaks. And again, it's also adding that extra aggression and that extra meanness that's going to sit really nicely in this punk style track. So let's throw our bass DI in. We can hear our bass guitar here, just the DI and the amp, no processing on the group yet. And now that we've got it controlled, now that we've got that foundational tone built, we can process it just like any other bass guitar. So a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression here, so we don't need to go too crazy with the compression, trying to grab those peaks. Otherwise, we have to push this compressor really, really hard just to grab those peaks, and suddenly we've destroyed the low end and the bass on our guitar here. A little bit of multi-band on the low end, and then here's our bass boost on the bottom end. And we can boost that as much as we'd like now because we have our bass guitar controlled. So here is our finished bass sound now. So if you have a bass guitar that's jumping all over the place, it has some big transients, some big peaks that really jump out and are giving you some trouble, try a little bit of distortion on maybe just your bass amp or just your bass DI if that's where all the problem lies, and it's going to help you control those transients, control the dynamic range, so you have an easier time when it comes to sitting the bass in the mix. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're ready to take your mixes to the next level and really start dialing in your workflow as an audio engineer, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and you can download it below to start creating more professional mixes in less time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.